CapuraGinga! What's up, guys? Hey, from gingaandgrowstrong here at the International Airport, headed to Portland, Oregon for Batizado of Cavaleiro, Graduado Cavaleiro. So we're coming soon. We're making our way to the airport. Very excited to go support one of our fellow peeps. It's Bora. 1 a.m. Just got here. Arrived in Portland, Oregon. Headed to the baggage claim to get the baggage, and then on for there. 1 a.m. Alright guys, it's Ohei with gingaandgrowstrong, and I'm here with my good friend Graduado Cavaleiro from CapuraGinga, Portland, Oregon, or Beaverton rather. Now there's a lot of people that, and I've done a lot of interviews with famous mestres like Mestre Efraim, Mestre Amang, Mestre Neneo, a lot of contramestres for a lot of my projects that you've seen here on my channel. But I want to give credit, as you know, some of my best-selling book, Capoeira Over 40, where we want to let people know, and we want to inspire other people who are a little bit older, you don't have to be 40, who think they can't do capoeira, and really inspire them and tell stories that there are people older age starting capoeira, not being an old master who started when he was, starting when you're young and become old, like a lot of masters that you see, but someone who actually started capoeira late in life, over 40 in this case, over 50, and we'll talk about that here momentarily, and who went all the way, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that. So not just did it recreationally, which is awesome if you just want to do that as well. Capoeira is amazing for you, but we're going to get more into that. Graduado Cavaleiro, thanks man for being with us. Thanks for inviting me out to your event. Awesome.
Thank you.
Cool. So tell us a little bit how you got started in capoeira.
I lived in Brazil for off and on for about 5 years, and first saw capoeira in Brazil and was taken in by the fact that it was a martial art that was done to music, and that being a lifelong musician by hobby, that was something that did interest me, and I wanted to learn a martial art, and so this one seemed very right to me. I also was a little bit tuned into the Brazilian culture and could speak some Portuguese, and so those were kind of some assets that I brought to the table when I started it, but in terms of the physical aspect of capoeira, it was something very different and new than I had ever done, and so it certainly was pushing my limits at age 50. I was about 56 and a half.
Wow.
And so I was in a class where I think the next oldest person was about 30, and so it was an interesting beginning. So
fantastic. So you mentioned you had tried other martial arts. What other martial arts did you try? And you said that they didn't exactly do it for you, and you said that you're a musician. Something about why capoeira kind of appealed to you more.
Mm-hmm. I did some training in Aikido,
okay,
and I thought that the things I learned were very valuable. Being able to focus on the key center and maintain your balance and poise through lots of movement made a lot of sense. But I just found the training to be boring, and that's nothing against the sport. It just for me, it didn't excite me, and I really just didn't have the initiative to want to keep going. So that was kind of the reason that I looked for something else. So you had a second part to that question.
Yeah, so you said that you're a musician. Does it appeal to you, the musical aspect of Brazilian capoeira, and that's why it kind of appealed to you? What do you do? Yeah, what kind of musician are you?
Well, I since about the age of 5, I played guitars, and so when I saw berimbau, a stringed instrument, I was actually kind of enamored with the simplicity of the instrument, having only really 2 actual musical notes and then some other sounds that you can do with the instrument, and was a little bit challenged by the idea of taking such a simplistic instrument and actually making music out of it. And I have really loved that part of it, like all parts of capoeira, but the music drove me, and it still is something that I aspire to be one of the best in doing the music part, and it's certainly well within my capabilities. So it was really the music and the rhythm and everything, the dance, even the dance, were all things I had some background in, and being able to pull that together and learn a martial art was like bringing it all together. So it was a good combo.
Fantastic. Awesome. So, what were some of the I don't know insecurities, but what were some of the doubts that you had when starting capoeira? How did you go into a mind frame? I mean, a lot of people are very discouraged about starting to train capoeira. What did you think your first class or your first as you started? A little intimidating, or you just jumped in head first?
Well, I had seen it performed live very briefly in Brazil, and so I had some idea of what it was. The school that I began to train in the U.S., the average age was probably early 20s, and so that was a big intimidating factor because I was 56 and the average age is 22, 21, somewhere around there. And so I quickly learned, and I guess I had a feeling that it would be the case, that as an older student it was going to take more time to do some of these things, and it's not like I had a background in gymnastics. I had none. So it was starting completely from scratch and doing things with my body that my body had never done. I'd never done a cartwheel in my life. I had never done a handstand in my life. And so all of these things were brand new. And in terms of my own insecurities of being a guy who needed to try to make it work and overcome the fact that it would take longer, I readily accepted that. And
awesome.
For me, that was the key. I think if I went into it with the attitude that I can't do it and everyone else is doing it,
right,
I probably would not have lasted. But instead, I said, no, I'm making progress here, and I see the end. I see how I can get to the end.
Fantastic.
It may take me 2 years, and it may take other students 2 weeks, but that's okay. The benefit to that is that I had to learn the hard way, step by step. Everything had to be it was very analytical for me, and probably more mental than it should have been. But that's how I overcame the physical age, was by analyzing it, breaking it down into small steps that I can do, and then just building those steps into into some sort of logical sequence or movement of capoeira. But it was very intimidating to walk into that particular group because it was so young, and it was. I would say the support for me as being an older student was 50-50. In all honesty, I felt in some cases that people didn't want me there,
right,
and in other cases, people were like, "Wow, that's cool!
Fantastic.
That is so cool that you're in here doing this." So those are the people I focused on,
awesome,
and the other people I kind of just let them blend into the background.
Yeah, it's very inspiring. You said that because a lot of groups, I know from my experience, they are like that. It's sink or swim, traditional Brazilian style, top level guys. They throw you in there, tell you to do it, and support is minimal. If you whether you're young or old, if you can't keep up, then you fall by the wayside. So I'm glad to hear that there's more academies being supportive of, making it easier for someone who's not able to learn so fast to learn and progress. So awesome. So he's very inspirational, but he actually went all the way. Now, what do I mean by, if you watch my channel, I always say your goal in capoeira, your big goal is to become a graduado, which I always think is like the equivalent of a black belt. Your first, in a lot of groups they call it instructor, they may call it monitor, depending, whatever your first title is. So a lot of groups are different. So he made it. He started late in life, 56, 57, 56 and a half. Went all the way to become a graduado. That's amazing. It's very inspirational. Now, what was the mentality? Did you, I know we had talked about this earlier, but for these guys, did you have the goal to go all the way and become a graduado, or were you, what was your mindset, progressing through capoeira court system?
Some of that, the answer is in part embedded in personality. When I do everything late in life, okay? So I put myself into college at age 30 and went 6 straight years and walked out with a master's degree.
Oh, yeah.
Never ever thought about higher education or a master's degree and anything like that when I went in there. I just wanted to go to college and see what it was like. So capoeira was the same sort of thing. I actually laughed at the idea of making graduado or high ranks. It just didn't even seem realistic to
That's
me
awesome.
to want to do that. And but I found that capoeira draws upon many facets of life. So it isn't all about doing the acrobatics. It isn't all about being able to do the perfect kick. It's a lot to do with your character and maturity and those things. Those were assets for me. Just like college, if you don't mind me making that comparison, just like college, I walked into college when I was 30, and suddenly I was surrounded by 18-year-old people who had never worked. They had never done anything on their own, and I'm this guy who had been out on my own for 10 years. I was involved in stage lighting and other professions, and so I already was a mature, established adult. I got 10 times more out of that college degree than most 18-year-olds would get, and I think the same thing is true here. I took it all in. I saw the different aspects of this sport, and I said, okay, well, which ones can how can I accomplish them? I kind of actually broke the different parts of the sport into different timelines, because I knew the music I would probably pick up quick. I knew the acrobatics would be the slowest, and then all the kicking and movement in between. Some of the movement in between was very dance-like, and that was not hard. But the acrobatic part and some of the kicks have been challenging. So just kind of looking at how I solve problems and how I go into things, it just did not seem realistic for me to plan that far ahead in capoeira. It was like, well, let's see what's going to happen. Let's see if I injure myself. Let's see if I'm going to hold up over time. Right. And for the most part, I did. And I think most people have that capability on up into older than myself. A lot of that has to do with what you've done with yourself. I mean, so if
taking care of yourself.
Exactly, yeah. So if you're 56 and you haven't been off the sofa in 10 years, it's going to be really hard. I was an avid golfer, so I golfed all the time. I walked all the time, and so movement and hard work. If any of you have played golf, you'll know that to get to a single-digit handicap in golf is a major accomplishment for most hacks, and of which I was one. And so you just kind of you do what you can with things, and with capoeira, and so there really was no end game, and to get to certain levels, I must admit that was the seduction, because as I achieved success and I realized, I can do this actually. May take me longer, but I can do it. That's kind of what started to drive me toward a goal. And I still have goals. I mean, I have goals that are beyond what I am right now. Fantastic. So I got inspired by my success. Maybe that's the way to say it. My success, not overwhelming by any means, but consistent progress and proving to myself that I can do these things was in fact what eventually led me to think, I can do more. And I still think I can. So I don't think I've reached that point in life where I'm saying, well, I'm going to start to physically deteriorate. And so in a year from now, I won't be doing AUs or cartwheels. I don't think that. No, I think in a year from now, I'm doing AU, Kaluna, doing other things that are even more advanced. So I haven't reached that point. I may, and I accept that, right? You know a lot of older maestros in this sport who some still play quite actively. Right. Some have really toned down their games as they've reached, some even as early as the 50s, but certainly when you're in your 60s and beyond that, people do start to slow down a bit. So that's a long answer, but there was no end goal in mind, but the goals kept moving with my success. So
fantastic. Okay, before we wrap this up, so not only is you started capoeira recreationally, maybe for one of the tri-martial art, maybe for weight loss, or just staying active or do something active. All of a sudden your goals are you're good, and you go all the way, you become a graduado, which is fantastic, super inspiring for anybody at any age, but it's truly inspiring for someone who started after the age of 50. And then now you own a capoeira studio here in Beaverton or Portland, Oregon. So even more cool. I mean, wow, how cool is that? You started just dabbling in this thing. Next thing you know, you're on a capoeira studio.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, awesome. Kudos to that. What is that like? We just had we just had Batizado, an awesome community, by the way. Great students, great kids, good energy, and a beautiful studio. So kind of a comment on transitioning from all of a sudden you're a studio owner and a capoeira teacher now.
There were driving factors. So I was planning on relocating and back to Portland area, of which is where I've lived for a long time. But at the time, I was living in Colorado, and I needed to return to Portland. And I had been training with the CapuraGinga group in Colorado, and there was no CapuraGinga group in Oregon. And this is the entrepreneur side of my personality. I said, well, there isn't one. What are my other options? And I looked at some other schools, but the locations were not good. I saw a very large demographic area that was virtually untouched, and I said, let's run it up the flagpole and see if anyone salutes it, because I had no idea. And I also knew that people coming in were probably going to be just like the school that I started out in. They were going to be much younger, have a lot of physical capabilities. So I had insecurities about, man, am I going to be able to teach these guys? I mean, and frankly, I have students that have probably physically part of capoeira who've already exceeded some of the things that I can do. Do I have a problem with that? I have no problem with that. That to me is my success.
That's awesome,
they're reaching those levels. A lot of their own inspiration and drive, but I do believe that I'm guiding them in the direction that gets their success, and that to me is a success. So it was a business opportunity. I have a business background, I have a business education, and I've owned small business before, so to me it made a lot of sense. I looked at the demographics. I actually did a complete business plan, looked at the demographics of each of the zip codes I was in. I said, man, these guys they're in the right age groups, their incomes are right, and everything seemed to be lined up pretty good. So the decision to actually open the studio was really based upon a certain loyalty to the group that brought me into this, and that's
awesome.
CapuraGinga. I could have come back to Portland like others and trained in another group, but that's not what I wanted to do. Didn't want to start over. I'd rather start over with my own deal than to walk into someone else's and have to repeat that whole process. So I just started the studio and went out and got students, and found that I had success with that. I have a lot of experience in public speaking and being in front of people. I was a rock and roll musician at one point in my life. So the concept of being in front of people and doing things. I was a musician in the 80s. I mean, we did things and wore things that most people would not do, right?
That's right, kiddies, if you don't know what the 80s is about, that's right.
Exactly. So to me, it was just like, really? You want me to get up there in these white clothes and lead a group of people doing exercise? And I said, sure. I mean, why not, right? So I just went with that. So there was not a grand plan to do that, but I saw a need, and I tried to fill the need, and am trying to fill the need for other people. So I filled it for myself as well. It kind of gave me, for lack of a better way to say it, gave me access to a whole group of people to train with that are going to play the game in my image, because they're learning from a CapuraGinga student, and they are now CapuraGinga players because they play kind of like me, and so they've developed greatly, and that's reward enough for me. So
great, and they have he's a great leader. They have a great respect for you, and they know that you are connected and just not some sham. That you're connected to a real group, CapuraGinga, with real backup, the people you brought in here, and me just coming in here for the first time and seeing the students, they're developing wonderfully, so great job, really appreciate it. Thanks for taking the time, thanks for bringing me out, and thanks for bringing the time. One last thing before we end the interview. What do you, what advice do you have to someone over the age of 40 or 50 who is considering starting capoeira and maybe have some doubts about it? One last note for them.
I've had a number of students who are over 40, and first I'll say I think that they're somewhat relieved when they meet me in person and they find out that I'm older than they are. So in that sense, it gives me an advantage to reach them.
Awesome.
For most people, it just kind of depends on where you're at, what your physical health is, what your physical state of health is. If you, as I said earlier, if you haven't been doing anything for a number of years, get into some sort of a fitness program, and if it's a capoeira-related fitness program, all the better. Get some tone back, get some strength back, because capoeira is going to ask for it. And there's a lot of moves that require upper body strength, lower body strength, abdominal strength. Those are all things that we should be working on anyhow, especially as you age, if I might say, because I see too many people who are in my age group who have already allowed themselves to deteriorate to a point where I'm not sure that they could ever get involved in the sport. Well, that's a big statement, but it would be a tremendous amount of work to come back from a certain point. But if you've maintained some health and are willing to try some things, start doing some exercise programs. There's a lot of things you can do to prepare before you do capoeira. In fact, I went to a gym. I was lucky, and I went to a gym that had an army of personal trainers, but I told the person who ran the personal trainers why I was there. I said, I need the condition for capoeira.
Oh, wow, you did?
And I did. And they said, we have a personal trainer that has capoeira background. That was Anastasia.
Oh, yeah, I remember.
And so I...
Oh, you trained with her?
She was my personal trainer.
Oh, that's cool.
Right, and I went to her and I said, hey, here I am, and you need to help me get fit for this sport. And she was wonderful in teaching me a lot of exercises and training techniques in the gym that would in future enable my capoeira. So I would highly recommend that a person get into some sort of physical activity, but find yourself a benevolent group who is going to be nurturing and not critical of you, and start doing the stuff. I mean, don't worry about how quick you're going to advance. Don't even think about it. In fact, I would like to say don't even care, but that's unhuman, because people want to advance. You want the recognition that you're getting better and doing things like that. But just go into it with the attitude that I want to do some things. I want to do something physical. This looks cool. It looks fun. And it's generally you're surrounded by people who have a like passion. And generally most groups are going to be mutually supportive. So I would say those are the two steps that I would do, and just get started. Don't delay it. I mean, just do it. I mean, it's just go in there, bite the bullet, be the odd guy for the first couple of weeks, because you're not going to know what direction and why they're doing what they're doing, and it's just. But everybody's that way. That's not an age thing.
That's right.
Just accept the fact that that's what you're going to go through, and look at it as a challenge and a growth opportunity, and take it on. So
awesome. Graduado Cavaleiro, thanks for your time, man. God bless you for working us out. That's it, guys. We'll see you next time. If you're leave a comment below if you're older and you're considering trying capoeira, let us know what you thought. Hopefully we inspired you to go ahead and take action. We'll see you on the next one, guys. Ginga and grow strong. And we're back from Portland, Oregon. Just landed in Corpus Christi, Texas, International Airport. We're back, and I hope you enjoyed that interview with Graduado Cavaleiro, and hopefully it inspires you to get started, get in shape, do what you want to do, enjoy this awesome, beautiful art. Remember, Ginga and grow strong. Simbora. And don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Ginga and grow strong.